I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I will second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The fire want to give an update?
Hello there, my name is Captain Chris Fleming, and I am from Fire Station 7 over at 21st and Amadon area. And we are, been a busy several days, been a busy kind of month, and we had lots of activity. So far this year, as I was driving over today, we were sitting at 47,598 alarms so far that we've made. In the last quarter, we had in District 6, we had 28 fires, 385 medical calls, and about 194 kind of other and service alarms. So 613 total alarms in the last quarter is what we've had. So it's been a busy quarter, so we're doing well. And so, any questions? Yes.
How's the planning or action coming for the remote or satellite location in regard to the Amadon Bridge project?
That's a great question. From what last time, latest information that I've heard is that we are looking at Dillon's at 13th and West. I believe that was a kind of a property that they kind of wanted to help with. And so I'm not really sure all the specifics, but as of now, that's kind of where it looks like that's going to go. I believe they're going to put a FEMA trailer there as well as a garage type thing. And they're planning on staffing that with 4 people for that engine. Yes.
Anybody else have any questions? Great,
All right.
thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wichita Police Department? Thanks,
Hello.
guys.
Officer Soto, I work over here at 48B, just south of 21st, out of Patrol North. So really, what I want to talk to you guys about was some events that we had and some that we're going to be participating in. Recently, we had Love Your Community, which was this past Saturday, and there was a neighborhood cleanup, which had a good turnout. There was a parade, a car show, and they had some different events here at the rec center over here where they had like some jumping houses. So it's a really good turnout. If you didn't go this year, hopefully you can come out next year, or maybe start it in a different community, because that'd be nice. Saturday, July 23rd, St. Pat's over at 623 West 20th. They're having a garden jubilee from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's going to be games and kids activities, and for more information, go to childrenfirstkansas.org. I will be there along with another teammate for that event. Also on the 23rd, there will be a Convoy of Hope Wichita backpack, school supplies, and groceries giveaway. I believe they're going to have 9 sites, and the Evergreen is going to be one of the sites. That'll start at 9 a.m. It's going to be a drive-through, and if you do come, you have to have your children present to get a backpack. So, and it's while supplies last, rain or shine. For more information on that and to see other sites, you can go to their Facebook page, Convoy of Hope Wichita. And then on July the 14th, coming up at 6 p.m., we will be participating in a town hall meeting for the fentanyl crisis in our community. It's going to be over at WSU, Beggs Hall at the Radigan Student Center. And it will be a question and answer session with speakers of the DEA, the Sheriff's Office, Wichita Police Department, ComCare, USD 259, and the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas. So I think that'd be a good one to attend as well. And I'll be there
Do
also.
you know if there's a virtual option for that?
I don't. I think it's in person, but I can ask.
You don't wanna- Any other questions? Nothing? All right.
Thank you.
All right. I'm Walter Batista. I'm at Patrol West. And the things that I'll talk about is going to be Patrol West. We partnered up with Youth Horizons. For those that are not aware, I know I'm reading this, so I don't say anything that doesn't apply to that. But they're committed to breaking the cycle of fatherlessness and helping boost nationwide awareness and create urgency for the needs of at-risk youth. So we've been doing a couple of events with them, and then we're going to have a few more events. I think it's 3 more throughout the summer and fall that we are working that we can do together with the kids. We have Stewie, the WPD new therapy dog, and the handler, Ali Larison. She's attended several community events. I believe she was at that the Evergreen I Love Your Community event, but it's a huge hit. I absolutely love that little dog. So that's another thing that we have going on. We had Second Chance Thursday this past Thursday. We cleared 98 traffic warrants. The DMV was there, and they helped 112 people get their driver's licenses. So that was amazing. 300 people, 300 residents came in. So it's a huge hit. There was it's called International Driver's License organization that's helping the Spanish-speaking community get their driver's license. And then they also had the DMV on site there and the city of Wichita. So if it was just a traffic ticket and they wanted to pay it there, then they could do it all at once, and it's done. The next one, I believe it's going to be in 3 months. That's going to be coming up. Then, of course, the last thing that I'll talk about is the last Wichita police recruits graduated, and they're entering their 3rd week of field training. So they have 12 weeks of training, but it's going to be numbers that we definitely need. So, questions for me?
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Sarah, you ready for the library report?
Good evening, Sarah McNeil, Wichita Public Library. We're here to promote summer reading program. It's still going on through July 28th, so that's 19 days left. If you have littles around, get them in, get them signed up. They can get prizes for reading. If you are looking for a quiet and professional place to conduct a job interview, that's an interviewee, not the interviewer. The Walters branch is actually opening up their meeting room for customers to use. So this is to combat folks that don't have access to technology or the internet. They can do Zoom interviews in the meeting room. This is the only branch that's offering this right now, but it's kind of a pilot to see if it can help the community, because we surveyed the area and realized that was something that was missing. So this is a way we can help folks get connected and then also get jobs. And just to piggyback off of that, Wichita Public Library received funding to extend our internet bundle service. So if you aren't familiar with that, it's a Chromebook and a hotspot bundle that you check out for 28 days. It's free. It's awesome. We have over 170 of them right now that are in use. We had more, but some of those things got damaged, so they're being repaired. So all you need is a library card for that. You can put it on hold. You can have them shipped to any branch that is convenient to you. You can use them for 28 days. If you need them longer, you can renew them. If it has a hold, you'll just get put in line to get another one. This has been really, really helpful for our community in the past year. We launched it at the end of November last year, and it's just been the most popular thing in our library of things collection. One caveat to the using the meeting room at Walters, it's not for business use. So it's just for the public, it's just for individuals on the other end of that interview. One thing that happened last month was our first permanent story walk was installed here at the Evergreen Park up the way. And I was part of that process. It was an amazing opportunity for us to install something that's permanent. And it's to promote not only literacy, but getting out and walking. The first story that has been installed is Dreamers by Juji Morales, and it's about her personal journey to the United States with her son. And it talks about her discovery of the library and finding her voice, and it's just a really beautiful picture book. She authors and illustrates it. So if you haven't read it, check it out. It's a really amazing story. We're going to be switching those stories out every 3 to 4 months, but that was the first one. It just hit all the marks, so we just had to start it with that. And then just to end, one thing that's really exciting, we've worked with the schools in the past to get e-cards to children that are in school that don't have access to the internet or e-resources. We've partnered with USD 259 now to give middle and high schoolers the opportunity to opt in to getting an e-card when they enroll. So this is something, enrollment started last Tuesday. So once they go to enroll, that's an option that they can opt into. You don't have to pay for e-cards. There's no fines. That burden of or barrier, I should say, of having a full access card isn't there. And so what this will do is give students access to research databases, ebooks, audiobooks, public computers, printing, and Wi-Fi. So sometimes, like I mentioned, minors might have e-cards, but this gives everybody the opportunity to access all of those resources, come to the library, and get online. So that has been a huge undertaking, and we're really excited to see how many kids we can get signed up. Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have to have a library card to take advantage of the room for the job interviews?
I don't believe you have to have a library card. If you wanted to borrow one of our laptops that has the camera to conduct the interview,
Okay.
yes, you would need a full access card. And
How do people find out about that or sign up to reserve that space?
you would want to call the Walters branch. I believe that they will have to check their meeting room schedule because they do rent out to the public. So it's got to, fall into that time frame of when they can. But I would imagine that they could probably get you in that week if you had a time and you could schedule with them. And their phone number is 316-337-9125. So give them a call. I believe they're closed on Saturdays and Sundays. That carried over from Linwood. But yeah, Monday through Friday, they're open. So you can go onto our website and see what their hours are. I think they open at 11 in the morning and then go to either 6 or 8, depending on the day of the week. Yeah.
I'm confused. What's the difference between a standard library card and e-card?
So a standard library card, it gives you access to borrow physical items. So an e-card, you only can borrow electronic items. Yeah. The e-card is good for a year, but because we're issuing so many e-cards to kids in school, we're setting the expiration date till they turn 18. And then at that point, they can sign for themselves and turn it to a full access card where they can borrow physical items. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
This is slightly related to this question. It just made me think, do you have to have an address to get a library card?
You have to have a permanent resident address to get a card. We do issue cards to people who are in homeless shelters. They have to have a letter from the shelter showing permanent residency, yes. You don't to get an e-card. An e-card, we just need a photo ID with your birthday. And if you are minor, someone older can get one for you, yeah. Mhm.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah,
Anybody else? All right, great, thank you so much.
thanks. Have a good night.
Okay, we're gonna move to the public agenda portion. There are no scheduled public agenda items for this month. So we'll move to the off agenda items. Is there any individual present that did not speak before that would like, okay, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Harold Schlechtweg. I live at 351 North Fern, and I want to apologize to the District Advisory Board that neither I nor anyone from our neighborhood was here at the last meeting when you decided on the McLean rezone. That was mostly my fault. I had long planned a vacation, and so I was out of town. I was out of cell range, and I brought my computer with me, but I didn't have access to Wi-Fi. So I was out of contact until that following Friday. And to make matters worse, I'd sent an email to others and told them a wrong date for the DAB meeting. I don't know if they would have come anyway. But I do believe probably would have provided some information because we weren't recommending it. And so we would have provided some information that probably didn't get included in the recommendation. But I do apologize to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring to your attention the fact that the cab regulations for the city of Wichita are not being enforced. We have a cab ordinance. I'll have copies of the ordinances over there. They require, if you have a cab license, that you have 24-hour service and that you have 24-hour dispatch. and that's fallen way short, especially since COVID's been on. I've tried on several occasions to get cabs in the evening from McConnell Air Force Base, not available. Especially after 9 o'clock, they're not even taking calls. I came into the airport on, I think it was June 12th. It was a Monday afternoon. I'd come in from St. Louis. There were no cabs available for most of the afternoon. They kept telling me they were going to send a cab in half an hour. No cab, no cab. Call another company, no cab, no cab. And that would have a tremendously negative impact on visitors coming in for conventions or something to not be able to get cab service. I had to make a cab reservation 2 days in advance in order to get a cab to take me to an early flight in the morning. And then when they did send the cab, they sent it on the wrong day, and we had to scramble around and make other arrangements. So I would recommend that you check with the cab czar. I think that's still Rob Rain, and that you rattle his cage about getting the cab ordinances enforced. That these cab companies cannot provide service and dispatch, then open up the opportunity for other people to come on and provide cab service, because it's pretty small group right now. As far as I know, it's basically 3 cab companies, 2 of which are dispatched or controlled by the same company. So that's just a note to try to make Wichita a better place. Could you all hear that about the cabs? Yeah. I don't know whether you've ever had trouble getting cab service, but it can be a real problem, and it especially impacts negatively upon elderly and handicapped people. And there's lots of people sitting around this town drawing unemployment that could be out being cabbies. They won't come to McConnell Air Force Base because a lot of them like to carry guns, and they can't get on McConnell Air Force Base with a gun. So if you're stranded in McConnell, you've come in on a flight from Europe or something, you're just stuck. $90 a night to get a room at McConnell.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna move on to new business, and the first thing is updating zoning code for the nightclubs in the city.
Yes, good evening. My name is Philip Ziebenberger with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. If I may, I'm going to take a couple moments to introduce some staff members we have. I'm going to start with Erin Ebach. She's our newest planner. She started 2 weeks ago. We're very excited to have her on board, help us process the wealth of cases we've been doing, especially in District 6.
Thank you.
So welcome, Erin. And then next to her is Tanner Faust. He's an intern we have with us this summer from Kansas State. Sorry, Councilmember. He's been working on some cases. He's actually going to present one of the cases tonight. Of course, staff providing the ultimate recommendations and stuff like that. But he and his counterpart Natalie, who is probably on a different advisory board tonight, have been working alongside of us with some of the cases as well as some other projects we've had this summer. So just wanted to let you know we had a couple other staff members here. Erin's just observing. Just kind of getting a feel for what she's probably going to do next month. So anyway, with that, I'm going to jump into our discussion about nightclubs in the city. If we're going to move just kind of methodically through this, I think we've had some in District 6, but staff embarked on an endeavor to amend the zoning code to change our definition of nightclub in the city. Actually, it's not changed that, it's actually changed the way in which we have to define certain establishments that want to provide some level of entertainment for their patrons. Over the years, it seems to be becoming a little bit more popular that restaurants that happen to serve alcohol want to provide some level of entertainment with live music, maybe a guitar player, somebody on the piano, sometimes even a live band or something like that. And so what they have to do is they come to the planning department and they have to apply for conditional use. Because say they're near a residential area or a school or something like that, and they have to apply for nightclub in the city. And so what do? We mail out letters to all the surrounding property owners saying, somebody's applying for a nightclub near you, even though it's Coco Dolce who wants a guitar player on a Friday night. Been a lot of confusion, a lot of undue angst has been caused by this. So we've had a lot of different stakeholders, including some elected officials, saying, can we do something about this? Because we're getting a bunch of phone calls. And a lot of times it's not for anything really major. You know, Club Rodeo isn't coming in. It's really just a restaurant who wants just to provide a band on occasion or something like that. So not to say that it wouldn't allow nightclubs to actually happen, but we usually provide language in there saying it's accessory to a restaurant, meaning you have to be a restaurant first before you can provide entertainment to avoid nightclubs actually coming into places that these are allowed in. So if you want to scroll through, I'm kind of skipping ahead on some of these things. So we're kind of working through here as to why we're talking about this. So we skip ahead. Next one. Next one. Next one. So we're actually not, I'll make a note on that. We're actually not looking for a recommendation for you guys tonight. We're taking feedback from all the district advisory boards. We did 3 last month. We're doing the 3 this month. We're going to take it back to the Advanced Plans Committee, which is half of the Planning Commission. They're going to assemble all the feedback, determine if there's any tweaks that we need to make to this definition. It'll go to the Planning Commission, that'll go to the governing bodies for final action. So like I said, we've had a lot of stakeholders, residents, businesses, elected officials saying the fact that we pretty much blanketly call anything that has alcohol and entertainment a nightclub is just kind of problematic. Keep in mind, this can include like a wedding venue. You cater in food that has alcohol, you bring in a band. Now this event center has to be considered a nightclub, according to our definition. Next slide, please. So, as you've probably gathered, if you have entertainment, as defined by the city code, which you go to the next slide, and you have alcohol, you're considered a nightclub. So entertainment by the city code, that's everything on the left column. Everything on the right column does not apply in terms of entertainment. So entertainment is dancing, disc jockey, so DJ, live music, concert, karaoke. I'd like to see pantomime considered. We haven't had that one yet, but comedian, hypnotist would also be a fun one. But anyway, I think one of the key cases that kind of launched all of this is if you guys are familiar with Round 1 at Town East Mall, when they came in to amend the community unit plan that governs Town East Mall for a nightclub in the city, we had to advertise 1,000 feet around the mall. It's almost a quarter mile in every direction around the mall. And all these people were like, you're putting a nightclub at the mall? Like, what in the world do you think you're doing? And it was like, no, Round 1 just wants a karaoke room. And we're like, wait, what? So I really think that was like the linchpin case where it's like, we got to get this changed. This is kind of getting crazy. So anyway, next slide. So like I said, bowling alley with a karaoke room, that was and one. Restaurants with a small live band, one of it was like Puerto Vallarta restaurant at Central and Tyler had to do this, not a nightclub, just wanting to provide some music. Obviously, this would apply to actual nightclubs. Club Rodeo, when they moved locations, had to go through this process, and obviously they are a nightclub. But we're just trying to differentiate between different types of facilities. And then probably even more impactful when nonprofits come in, because then they get kind of painted in a different light, where it's like, what are you really trying to do? Versus really when they're just wanting to provide an opportunity to fundraise. And we actually had one recent occasion that kind of based on the terminology kind of set a sour note with the neighborhood around there, and they weren't actually able, they actually got denied because there was just so much outcry against it. They're like, this is not how we want to go about this, and they just didn't want to move forward. So anyway, next slide, please. So what are we talking about? Next slide. In the zoning code, we have another definition or other use category already. It's called an entertainment establishment. So basically think of an establishment that does not serve alcohol, but provides entertainment. I don't think there's many of those, but
Right.
that's technically already defined in the zoning code. What we're looking at doing is we're actually changing the definition of entertainment establishment to allow for the provision of alcohol. So that smaller establishments, we're using a capacity cutoff of 300 people. If your capacity is over 300, you're going to be considered a nightclub. If your capacity is under 300, you're going to be considered an entertainment establishment. So we're actually adding the ability for entertainment establishment to have alcohol. So that when you have a relatively modest-sized restaurant come in and they want to have some entertainment, our advertising says it's an entertainment establishment. So that when somebody gets a letter in their mail, they don't instantly think a nightclub is going to be able to come here in the future. This restaurant might be able to go away, but somehow they're going to sneak in a nightclub. So we're going to base it off of capacity. The reason we chose 300 is my understanding, I learned this through this process, in the building code, when you get to 300 capacity or more, there's a change in how the building has to be constructed. There's different codes that they have to meet in order to have a structure that can handle that many people. And so to me, it seemed really just very straightforward to say, well, if that's already a line in the sand, you might as well meet that line in sand. If something that can house more than 300 people have to have a more stringent structural process or other codes they have to meet for fire, things like that, that seems, and then therefore it's not even an arbitrary number. So when we get applications, it's actually going to be the onus is going to be on us a lot more to be making sure we have that correct and proper information about what that facility's capacity is so that we're defining them correctly in the future. Next slide, please. The next, I'm sorry, back up one, sorry. The next thing that goes along with this right now in our zoning code, a conditional use is required for an event center, which is someplace that you can rent, whether there's alcohol or entertainment or just someplace you can rent, or an entertainment establishment, so the lesser evils, if you say. Because if you just have an event center, somebody's renting it, there's not necessarily alcohol there, there's not necessarily entertainment. They have a 200-foot radius that if outside of 200, within that 200 feet, if there's a church, a place of worship, a school, a park, or residential zoning, they have to apply for the conditional use. Well, when you go the next step up where you have tavern and drinking establishment, just a bar, nightclub in the city, those require 300-foot radius, that if that any one of those types of things is within 300 feet, you have to have the conditional use. So that we actually have two different things where the 300-foot radius is more restrictive. You go out farther, that if it catches one of those, and it's lot line to lot line. It's not the corner of the building to the corner of the building. It's like if your lot line 300 feet to their lot line, even if there's a sea of parking in between that, you still have to get the conditional use. So we're actually streamlining it. The distance requirement that will trigger a conditional use will be set at 300, regardless of if it's an event center, entertainment establishment, tavern or drinking establishment, or nightclub in the city. Makes enforcement easy, makes everything simple. We're just going to have one distance requirement. So that's the second caveat to this proposed amendment, is just to make it easy. That way, right now, entertainment establishment would only need 200 feet, nightclub would need 3. Well, if we're allowing alcohol to be part of an entertainment establishment, it should follow the same rules as well. So we're just going to streamline everything. So next. So again, in review, nightclub will be capacity of over 300 people. Entertainment establishment will be under 300 people. A entertainment establishment does not necessarily have alcohol. A nightclub will always be considered a nightclub with alcohol. Like that's the thing that will instigate, that's not changing. It's just if you're under 300 people and you're providing alcohol and entertainment, you'll be just an entertainment establishment instead. Next slide, please. So our next steps, I kind of went over this briefly, kind of hard to see. We're at the district advisory boards and stakeholder engagement. We're compiling a list of current nightclub owners or like true nightclub and entertainment facility owners, just to reach out to them to get their feedback. This truly is changing nothing for them. If they're already licensed, if they're already in operation, nothing is changing. It's not like we're requiring them to relicense and pay a lot of money and go through, like, it will truly not change their day in and out because, one, there's not a nightclub license. They get licensed differently. It's different terminology. But really, it's just more of like, in case they have an opinion on this, like they're not getting treated unfairly, just because even at a smaller establishment, they still have to go through the same process. We're just calling it something different. So if they're already in operation, we just want to get their feedback, make sure we do our due diligence, see if they have any feedback or questions. But we're not making undue hardship on them with fees or anything like that to change the way they're doing what they're doing. So just more of a reach out to them. And as always, we're going to the district advisory boards. As I mentioned, we're going to the advanced plans committee once we get all of our feedback by the end of this month. We're going to review and make any updates depending on the feedback that we get. Then it'll go to the planning commission for their review and they'll make recommendation. And then following the planning commission, it'll go to our governing bodies. Since our zoning code is a unified zoning code between the city and the county, we have to go to both for them to approve it together since it governs both the city and the county. Because we do have a nightclub in the county definition, which basically is getting changed with this as well. So next slide, please. where we're at. Next slide. That's it. So, like I said, we're just trying to gain some feedback. Aaron's going to be taking some notes. If you have questions or just general comments about the definition change, we're kind of jotting them down. Maybe answer some questions you might have. Otherwise, we'll bring things back to the Advanced Plans Committee for them to consider to see if we need to tweak it, if anything we're doing. Yes, sir.
So as I listened and watched, I jumped to the conclusion that most of the examples used would utilize indoor entertainment modules or modes. I guess my concern is, how do we differentiate with this between an establishment that's going to use either indoor or outdoor entertainment? Because outdoor entertainment will obviously have further sound coverage that could potentially disrupt the neighborhood more.
I can tell you that anytime we look at a conditional use for what now is a nightclub in the city, regardless of what it is going to be, we review whether or not we're going to put a condition on there to allow outdoor entertainment or not. Because if the site gets a conditional use for nightclub in the city to allow entertainment, and there's no regulation on it, the only thing governing it is the noise ordinance, where they could put the band outside. And so I can say from past experience and even current experience, we're going through a couple more right now through these current cycles we're in, that anytime we're looking at it, we're determining, is this a proper location where any outdoor entertainment should be allowed? In some cases, we're recommending no. We don't think it is allowed. Sometimes we enclose it in the patio, whereas like it has to be an enclosed patio. Technically, it's outside, but it's harnessed, and you're not going to grow a concert to 500 people just because the band is provided by this, but it grows out into the parking lot. And then I can tell you from most experiences, we're generally putting hours of operation on the entertainment. You know, the facility can stay open, but the entertainment portion has to cease by a certain time. That's more restrictive than what the standard city code would allow. Typically, the hours of operation, we throw on one, for example, in District 5 last month, which was apropos because I did this presentation while I also had to explain a staff report about a nightclub in the city, was for Emerson Biggins at 21st and Mays behind Dillon's. There's backyards for people right behind them. And so we put hours of operation of 10 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday, midnight Friday and Saturday. Kind of the whole thing of like 10 o'clock, you know, getting dark in the summer, you know, not the end of the world if there's some music playing at 10 o'clock, but we need to shut it down on weeknights anyway because people have to get up and go to work. You know, weekend, let them go a little bit later. Does that mean Emerson Biggins has to shut down at 10? No, just the entertainment. They'll allow some teeth that if music's blaring at midnight on a Tuesday, they can call the police. The police will work through the city system. They'll get cited, and they can actually get the conditional use revoked if there's too many instances of not obeying the rules. So there's lots of caveats to that where we do look, and most of the time we either just enclose outdoor entertainment to a patio, or sometimes we don't allow it at all.
Is this different or from the old cabaret license?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Okay. I just remember there was a time when if you actually had someone singing or dancing in your facility, you had to have this cabaret license.
Yeah, I don't know how this
But
compares.
that's
Because the first thing I think of cabaret is a whole different sort of
Yes.
business, which
Right,
is
I know.
governed very differently. But, so no, I don't know how to answer that question. So, but in terms of somebody singing or dancing, of course, this is appropriate dancing. This is more like, forgive my white moves, but yeah. Yeah, don't get me started. So anyway, yeah. So for example, there was kind of a go around. I don't exactly remember how it got resolved, but Texas Roadhouse in town, like their staff provide entertainment every so often. They throw the right song in, and all of a sudden all their waitresses are dancing. Waiters and waitresses, I should say, are dancing. And so all of a sudden it's like, well, you're serving alcohol and your wait staff is dancing. And there was a I don't want to say a workaround, like there was a loophole, but like there came to an understanding of like, no, this is something you still have to do, even though it's your wait staff. But anyway.
So the hours of operation, you said, is that a case-by-case thing?
That's a
or is-
case-by-case
okay.
thing. But that's something that could be considered. You know, when we're thinking of like entertainment establishment potentially being lesser intensive than nightclub in the city, knowing it's going to be potentially more in habited areas, we could consider that there might be standard of hours of operation that are just written into this definition. If you're an entertainment establishment that's serving alcohol and entertainment.
And how would that affect the existing establishments of the new place? Like, I don't know, what's the average, do you know the average, like, attendance or capacity of any of the nightclubs that already exist in downtown?
I don't know. And that's the thing is like, if something moving forward gets defined as an entertainment establishment, anything that's currently defined as a nightclub continues that definition. So there would probably be an argument of grandfathered in. I can tell you, and I learned this, and that was actually very helpful for people to understand. If you're familiar with Emerson Biggins on the west side, behind Dillon's there used to be like the tag office, and I think they might have taken over the tag office thing. Just Emerson Biggins is actually over 300 capacity. Like, it kind of surprised me at how small that building is, relatively speaking, but it actually has a capacity of 300 people. But no, that's something we can consider, is whether or not entertainment establishment moving forward should have just standard hours of like, nope, if you're an entertainment establishment, you know. But sometimes it's worth working on a case-by-case basis, because you might have something more in a commercialized area that there's really not going to be an effect on somebody, but something to consider.
Bill kind of answered this in a roundabout way, but I wonder, is there any non-religious reasons to have this buffer zone around these, like this, and then say that maybe there's not, or I guess my follow-up is like, why not streamline it down across the board? And I'm thinking of a specific example just in terms of like how I would imagine like that would work, is there's a little building in Riverside that's right in between a school, right in between a church, and would not be able to like even have a coffee shop that also served like after work drinks or something like that, right? Like that had, it's just too far, but I think like we would want, like, in order to get more neighborhoods walkable, different uses of space, we'd want to be able to be more flexible with some of these things. This is a great idea, except we increased or decreased the places that they can be.
Well, that distance
Right.
doesn't prohibit them from locating there. That distance is what actually causes them to have to do the conditional use. So, for example, if you have a commercially zoned property that wants to do an entertainment establishment or a nightclub in the city, tavern, drinking establishment, whatever, and there's not one of those things within 200 or 300 feet, they can just do it by right.
Yeah. But what, I mean, I guess I was.
So
asking, why
that
shouldn't
distance
they be-
does
what's
not
that distance
prohibit,
about?
that distance just allows it, like, when it comes in for review, if they want to get their license or something like that, it triggers the reviewer to say, no, you need a conditional use because we want a site-specific look at this to determine, is this going to have a detrimental effect on any surrounding properties? Because those types of properties are within that boundary. So it doesn't say that, no, that's going to be denied. It just says, you have to go through the public hearing process to determine, is this an appropriate location for this? And that then allows us the opportunity to put conditions of approval on like hours of operation, where we probably look at it and say, hey, this is a school and a church. Evening hours are nothing. There's no residential around it that might be a nuisance to this. You know, this is actually a great location to do this because you're actually not going to have detrimental effects. So
I guess, do we have a reason why we wouldn't do 300, why we wouldn't do a smaller zone, just because we're kind of like, well, most of these things, like, we do understand, like the hours of operation are in general difference from here, and there shouldn't be a conflict normally.
I think we had it because nightclub in the city is already at 300 and tavern and drinking establishment is a 300-foot radius right now. So both of those share in common alcohol. And we had a case in District 1 where the establishment was already approved for a bar. And they were trying to determine whether or not adding entertainment was going to be okay. They're going through the conditional use process. And the determination was, well, they can already drink till 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, is the concerns of the impact on the neighborhood really going to change if they're allowed to have a band there? When really, most of the people on the district advisory board for District 1 agreed that the detrimental effects of these establishments is likely related more to alcohol than it is the fact that a band is there, you know? And so I think because the uses that already permit alcohol had the 300-foot radius. And again, it's not just because it's a church there, but like residential zoning, a park, when you think of like something can be open in the afternoon, do we want certain things affecting city parks where kids might be playing and stuff like that?
Or you could go sleep one off.
Right. So it's the fact that
We might
the
want
establishments
close to the
that already
parks.
had alcohol had the 300 feet, instead of bringing those down, we said, well, now we're allowing this one to have alcohol, let's bring that up.
Yeah. I guess I'm asking the other question, like, why not consider bringing them all down?
Something to consider. I don't know if I have an answer for that, but
I'm throwing that.
to me, it's logical to bring it up since everything else was alcohol related, but something to consider of making it less restrictive.
All right, anybody else? All right,
So this is like a receive and file.
thank you.
Yeah. No major action on it.
Okay. We'll move on to the planning case, 2022-19.
So for this one, I'm gonna give the floor to Tanner, let him do the majority of the presentation of the staff report. If you have questions, if he can answer them, great, otherwise I can step in and make sure it's
Awesome.
good answers.
Thank you.
Stand up, microphone. At the microphone.
Okay, good afternoon. Like you said, my name is Tanner Faust. I go to K-State and I'm a planning intern. We are going to be looking at conditional use case 2022-0019. The applicant is requesting a conditional use for the addition of an accessory apartment in an existing accessory structure. The subject site is located at 1541 North Woodrow and is platted in the Riverside Place Edition, or generally located 1/4 mile north of West 13th and 1/2 mile east of North Amadon Avenue. The site is surrounded by single-family zoning, and I'm going to give you a quick definition of what an accessory apartment is. So the Wichita-Sedgwick County Unified Zoning Code defines an accessory apartment as a dwelling unit that may be wholly within or may be detached from a principal single-family dwelling unit. Accessory apartments are also subject to supplementary use regulation 1 through 4, which I will read to you. Number 1, a maximum of 1 accessory apartment may be allowed on the same lot as a single-family dwelling unit that may be within the main building, within an accessory building, or constructed as an accessory apartment. Number 2, the appearance of an accessory apartment shall be compatible with the main dwelling unit and with the character of the neighborhood. Number 3, the accessory apartment shall remain accessory to and under the same ownership as the principal single-family dwelling unit, and the ownership shall not be divided or sold as a condominium. And lastly, the water and sewer service provided to the accessory apartment shall not be provided as separate service from the main dwelling. Okay. Moving on. Okay, the conditional use permit is in conformance with the following plans. Excuse me. So the community investments plan states that the site is in a area of opportunity, and it defines it as an area that needs strategic investment, both public and private, to assist in redefining and reinvigorating the area physically and socially. In areas of opportunities where the economic markets are typically limited, small-scale infill and redevelopment projects will define the initial improvements. Accessory apartments promote small-scale infill and will contribute to the improvement of the area. As well as it encompasses an area that reflects the full diversity of residential development densities and types typically found in large urban municipalities. Planning staff recommends approval with consideration or conditions listed in the staff report. The case went to Planning Commission last Thursday and was approved, but there was some dialogue regarding the design of the garage that the accessory apartment was going to be located in. The existing structure was built with no required design standards because it wasn't initially going to be used for an accessory apartment. It was just the garage. But since the applicant is requesting the conditional use, they have to meet the second rule that I listed, or the second standard, I should say, which is the appearance of an accessory apartment shall be compatible with the main dwelling unit and with the character of the neighborhood. As the case moves to city council, they are going to lean off the decision today to approve, adjust, or deny staff recommendations. And if we scroll down, we have pictures of the garage and the subject site. That is the main dwelling. And then these are just views from the house. And then if you keep going, you can see the garage. This is where the apartment is going to be located on the second story of this building. That's a little closer look at it. You can see the building materials. And then I think if you go one more, maybe two more, this is the space in between the main dwelling and the accessory apartment. And I can answer any questions or pass them along to Mr. Zevenbergen if I can answer them.
So this was already built and then they're applying for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it was obvious, I mean, it was constructed with the whole space for an apartment upstairs. I wonder, it's just been within the last couple of years.
I believe so. There was, if I reference my staff report, in 2020 they filed a adjustment for the height. So I'm guessing it was built around then, 2020.
Right, they adjusted a setback and they adjusted the height in relation to this structure. So yeah, in the last couple of years, sometime after 2020.
I can't help but thinking that they were planning to have an apartment there anyway. Is there some advantage to them to not address that in the original permit, or?
Well, in the original permit, if you get a building permit to build a detached garage, the city of Wichita does not have any architectural standards, North Riverside does not have any architectural standards that have to be followed. And so you build a structure, well, then you come back and put living quarters in it, a kitchen, things like that, make it the official apartment, and then these rules technically apply. And so the sticking point with this one is the planning commission decision. They opined that they found that it was in character with the neighborhood. This board can determine whether they think it's that. So there's a couple options. You can opine that way, make a recommendation with the saying that you find it is in character. You can make a recommendation and recommend that that rule be waived. It would require this case to go to city council, because city council is the only one that can waive supplemental use regulations from the zoning code. In effect, basically saying, we don't necessarily think it's in character, but we're not going to make them change anything about the exterior of the structure. You could also technically recommend approval saying that it has to be compatible, but there probably need to be some level of definition of what would bring it to compatibility. Of course, if you guys opine differently than the planning commission, it would go to city council anyway, and Councilman Browder would make the final decision on whether or not which way to go. But like I said, I think the most difficult one would be opining that it is not in character and still and requiring some external, because then you look at the enforcement side of things of, well, if it's just painting the navy to something more earth toned, somebody else in the future can just repaint it anyway. So like, I don't know, this one's truly is a difficult case because you have they built the garage fair and square. Now you come along and there's this other rule. So how do we determine how to handle this rule that says it needs to be in character with the existing dwelling in the surrounding neighborhood, when architecture can be in the eye of the beholder?
And the thing that makes it odd too is that the house faces Woodrow,
right?
And it's just the typical one-story brick
Style,
structure that the rest of that street is. And then you go around the corner and there's this garage, and it's pretty impressive. And yeah, it doesn't really fit the character of the neighborhood. It's a little upscale.
Have the neighbors spoken out about it?
It's obviously well constructed, and it's a quality,
At Planning Commission, Claire Willenberg, pretty sure everybody on the board knows who Claire Willenberg is. She spoke at the Planning Commission meeting. Her opinion was that it was not in character. In terms of, like, we haven't heard any opposition about the accessory apartments, about the use. It's just more of whether or not the building should follow that rule, and who determines whether it's in character or what makes it in character and things like that.
How much change can you ask somebody to make on something that's already applied for a permit and it's been approved?
Yeah, I guess my comment on the in character, say, somehow they got the permit, final inspection was bought off, so.
Well, again,
It's
if
a
they
little
build
late.
I don't know, I was gonna say, if they got a building permit for the garage, if
Right.
there was an apartment planned for it, they, one, should not have got the building permit for the garage in the first place without doing this first. So my understanding is they got a building permit for a garage, and now they're looking to add the apartment.
My point is,
Right.
regardless of what their intention was when it was built, the design and the construction was completed.
Correct.
And it was bought off through final inspection. So enough of that. I guess what I'm more concerned about is what kind of standards are going to apply to this as far as, whether there's going to be a multiple entrance and egress required from a safety standpoint.
Well, when they go to include this apartment, they have to meet all the building code for a
Okay.
secondary dwelling.
Okay.
That doesn't, the building standard for the garage had to be met, and then part of this, one of our conditions of approval is that all applicant permit, shall obtain all applicable permits, including but not limited to building, health, zoning, so on and so forth. So like,
That'll cover all
the
that.
accessory apartment has to be signed off that it meets all the required building codes of ingress, egress, fire safety, all of that.
So guys, like just a clarifying
Mhm.
question, we have really only two questions pertaining to these cases. One, with the question of the accessory apartment and whether or not that can go forward with the recommendation, but then there's also this separate question of the aesthetic of the
Correct.
place. Can we see the place one more time? Just like, I liked that, one that was facing directly on.
3-car garage, and then I think there's a passenger, there's a single door on
Is
the
it
Yeah, I
west
think it's
side
the
that
one more.
Is it still part garage and then part
The upstairs will be the apartment.
And can we go one more down, I think there's.
So, is there already an apartment in
Yeah,
there?
all right.
See, so
I'm not aware.
Oh, I see.
there's the door, right, a single door there, so
I mean, I guess.
what would tell us whether there's a staircase right there? Did they build a staircase?
Well, that's almost not important, right? I mean, like, in terms of the interior of the place, that has to do with this accessory apartment question, whether or not they can go forward, and then they have a whole set of other guidelines. But the other question is, does it match whatever we consider this? And I don't feel like, do we have guidelines? You said the North Riverside doesn't have those kind of guidelines. So,
The guideline is what is in character with the neighborhood. The main dwelling or the neighborhood, and that's what makes this tricky.
it kind of feels like with no guidelines, we can't answer that question. I mean, like, we can like say, Bill can say like, I like it, and I can say like, I don't know too much stone, but like, we don't have anything that directs us on that particular question to be able to answer.
And maybe
it
that's what
beyond.
moved the planning commission to say, like, it's a well-bit, there were comments at planning commission saying like, it's a well-bit structure, it aesthetically, it looks pleasing, it's whether or not it matches, and maybe that's leading to what you're saying of like, well, who's to determine
Yeah.
if
Well,
it
the one
matches?
question,
Right.
and I'm a little confused on it, that's why I'm pressing a little bit on it. The question of what it looks like doesn't particularly have anything to do with what's on the inside.
Right.
And so there's kind of like there's two problems here, and they're not really related. But the one, the aesthetic question can actually derail the other one because it packaged with it, right? I mean, that's where you're saying we have to, it's
Right,
confusing.
because
in
your
terms of
very
what-
first question is an accessory apartment a suitable land use for this site?
Right.
That's the main question. In order to achieve that, there's that secondary question of, are we going to make a recommendation to say, we feel it's in character, or maybe we just don't have enough information to say it's not in character, and just move forward, or to say, maybe, and this could be a possible solution is, we're just going to recommend that that requirement for this site be waived, so that it takes that question out of there, who's to say it's in character or not, because if you waive the requirement, then this site doesn't have, that no longer
I
applies.
see.
It would just cause this to then move to city council, for them to have a final decision, where with conditional uses, if your guys' recommendation matches planning commission and it's not protested, then it doesn't go to city council. It adds about 2 weeks to their time to go to city council approval before the resolution is signed and they can move forward, so.
This isn't protested currently, right?
Not yet, it was, the planning commission was on Thursday, so we're in the protest period, which ends the 21st.
So is the applicant here?
I
Anybody?
emailed him earlier today, I did not receive a,
Okay.
he
Just
also
gonna
was
say,
not
that
at.
could help if they're gonna answer these questions.
They were not at planning commission either, which is why he made my meeting today, because it's hard to have conversation about someone's
Right,
property.
we've been
when they
running into
can't
that
live.
problem where some of the applicants
inside.
don't go to.
And I
planning
apologize that
or-
they're not here.
Yeah.
Our notification letters do provide them the date and time of the meeting,
Okay,
but, so anyway, so, like I said, if it sounds like, you know, if you're looking at, well, we don't know if we have enough information to determine the character, if you just waive the requirement altogether, then it just no longer applies. Like I said, planning commission, there were, it was a 9-2 vote, so it wasn't unanimous, it was a 9-2 vote, and their recommendation was, they just said, we feel it is in character, and we're going to just
You feel
approve
it
it as
is?
it's. They said it was, they didn't waive the requirement, they just said, their recommendation was that it was in character.
Yeah,
and
I'm a little apprehensive about waiving requirements because all of a sudden that can become a de facto
It would
standard.
go with the land, like, and then you wonder about precedent
Well,
of,
yeah, precedent for other.
I can just build
other
whatever
requirements.
and just ask for a waiver.
Oh, so that's another kind of like pitfall in here, is if we waive the requirement for this particular case, it
And then-
maintains throughout, that becomes then the.
So if somebody were to want to rebuild that garage, I'm not
Right.
sure who would want to do that, but if somebody were to, it gets burned by a fire or something, then they can build any looking structure because that no longer applies.
That's only if we waive it.
Correct.
If we just approve it, if it
If
burned
you
out and
approve it
wanted
and
to
you say
rebuild,
it's
it
in
would have to go
character,
again.
then that rule applies, so if it's damaged or destroyed or rebuilt or something like that, that rule still applies in terms of a new structure with, and especially if that building is destroyed and they want to rebuild with another accessory apartment, then there would be the architectural review from the very beginning of the building of a new building.
So we can't say, we simply can't say it's out of character.
I would say,
We
in a
can't
sense,
say
you
that.
can't, s-
We're not gonna say it's not in keeping.
I'll let
Okay.
you be
The
the.
double. I
You've
did
got
it.
one question back in the back.
Well, speaking of garages and houses, my neighbor passed away last year. His house is still empty since he passed away. And the garage is a ramshackle terrain of raccoons and possums falling down. So this is beautiful. And I live at 14 Burns, so we say, does it fit in the character of the neighborhood? Well, there's a wide variety of things that are happening in North Riverside. And they're working on getting something to be done about this situation. And we're just gonna put up a privacy fence and hold our nose and carry on, but it has been a little bit frustrating. Because I like the neighbor, and his name was Greg, and he passed away, and there's still, he probably was what they're gonna do in the meantime. And places, looking like that and stuff. So, I don't have a problem with
Well,
it.
I think I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and
I
approve.
have a question.
Oh, sorry.
You said there's no architectural standards for a garage. Is there something in the inspection phase that would have said this might be an accessory apartment and not necessarily a garage? I don't know very many garages that have second floor windows, but
I would
this
say
looks like an accessory apartment to me.
The thing that triggers something to be considered an accessory apartment is typically a full kitchen. Because you're right, there could have been up there like, oh yeah, like, obviously there's some place for somebody to live, but if there's not a full kitchen, it's not considered a dwelling unit. That's usually the tipping point on something becoming an accessory apartment, is when you have the ability to make food in it. Because it's pretty easy to put a bathroom, it's pretty easy to have a space where you can live/sleep. It's just more of the effort to make some place where you can actually cook food to some degree. And that's not just a microwave, but like, it doesn't have to be like full appliances, but something to where food can be prepared.
Would you repeat your motion?
I was gonna make a motion to approve, based off of the staff recommendation, not waive what is it, the requirement for it to fit into neighborhood. Yeah. I'm concerned if we, I don't think necessarily that this fits the aesthetic of the neighborhood personally, but I don't want to waive that, because if it burns down or something happens, then they have the right to build whatever, and I don't, yeah. This isn't offend me, but I don't think it necessarily fits the aesthetic of the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
I think it's
Hold on,
the
there's a-
limestone.
There's an
that-
active motion.
Oh.
I'll second it.
Just like, okay.
Yeah.
Do we need to go back for more discussion, or how does that work? If Tom still wanted to talk when he already made a
I was gonna
motion.
say, I think you can, you're still up for
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, I just don't want to go on record as saying that fits in with the character of the neighborhood.
I agree.
The fact that they use limestone and the whole rest of
Right, it's
the neighborhood
completely
is red
different.
brick. It-
It's nice looking, it's just different.
I don't think it fits the character. And they obviously built it intending, like I said, who puts, gables in the upstairs window and rocks, so.
Yeah.
I did that 35 years ago.
People do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay.
The man's work is never done. The man's work is never done.
That's right. You do a great job.
So we'll move on to the next zoning case.
This is a dual case, it's a zone change and a conditional use for, surprise, surprise, duplexes. A little bit of humor, it's located at 802 and 804 North Custer, which is on the northeast corner of Custer and Murdoch. Staff recommendation is recommending approval with conditions. So it's currently zoned single-family residential, they're looking to rezone it to two-family residential. A caveat to this is they're asking for the conditional use to allow for multifamily development. It's an option within two-family zoning to not just put, right now this is two platted lots, or two platted parcels, I should say. They could put a total of two duplexes, one on each, for a total of 4 dwelling units. They're looking to put a total of 4 duplexes for a total of 8 dwelling units. In TF3 zoning, by conditional use approval, you can do multifamily level development up to 14.5 dwelling units per acre, which is our lowest, in terms of multifamily development, our lowest density cap in terms of most restrictive. To give you a perspective, if you only built to the minimum lot size requirements in two-family zoning, you could fit 14.5 dwelling units in an acre. So typically, lots aren't just the minimum size, it would be pretty small. But that's just give you a perspective of, even if they were just individual lots within an acre and they all have the proper access and things like that, the maximum you could get in an acre is 14.5. This is just basically doing that within, in a sense, one big lot. The plan is to demolish the existing residential structure on the property and develop, like I said, 4 duplexes. I think would be helpful if you go to the site plan. There you go. So it's on a corner lot, and the site plan submitted by the applicant shows that 2 duplexes would have access off of Custer, and then the rear, and so they would face Custer, and then the other 2, you basically flip them around, they would face the rear of the property, and you'd have a driveway along Murdoch that would serve those 2, and then the backs, in between the backyards would be either common space, or maybe they'd fence them off, they want some private space for each of their tenants, that'd be up to them to decide. With it being one lot, the only requirement for spacing between buildings is the fire code. That's how multifamily development works, is you don't have those site setbacks anymore, so they just have to do fire code. So whatever space they want to allow them for private space to fence off, that's for them to figure out, if they want to provide that. Because it is now multifamily development and not just duplexes, the requirements for screening and the requirements for landscaping get put in place. If this was simply TF3 zoning next to SF5 zoning, no screening requirements, no landscaping requirements, but now you're packing in some more dwelling units onto the site. We're requiring you to have a little bit more buffering between you and the residential properties around you to help minimize the impact of it. So it's a minimum of a 6-foot screening fence along the north and the east property lines. I believe the fence is already there. Either replace it if it's getting old, or they just have to maintain it. Not will have to stay there. Landscaping requirements. Landscape buffer on the north and the east property lines. That's a minimum of 1 tree per 40 linear feet. That's a shade tree requirement. You can do 2 ornamental trees per 1 shade tree if you wanted to. You also have to provide a landscape street yard along Custer, which is a certain amount of landscaping inside your front property line because it's across the street from residential zoning. So again, things to help soften the view of it. So this site plan will have to be revised because it will need to show the landscaping before we approve it to make sure that that they know that they need to do it and know that it will be installed. And the landscape plan has to be reviewed and approved before they can get a building permit. So this isn't a matter of you build your houses and all of a sudden now we have to think about the landscaping, like you don't get a building permit until you understand this is how much landscaping you have to provide. The other thing that goes up with multifamily development is the parking requirement. Parking requirement for just a duplex is 1 per dwelling unit. So a duplex would require 2 because there's 1 unit on each side. With multifamily development, if these are 2-bedroom units or more, you're now at 1.75 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Looking at this plan, it looks like they're going to be proposing single-car garages for each unit. A parking space can be counted inside the garage and in the driveway behind it. And so with that, each unit actually has 2 spaces per unit, so they satisfy the parking requirement and don't need to provide additional parking, which is kind of nice because now in a residential area, you're not necessarily having to provide like a parking lot of sorts. You can still keep some of the character of it, having driveways leading to garages, and it satisfies your parking requirement. Directly around this property is all zoned single-family residential. However, if most of you are familiar with this area, there's actually been quite a bit of activity, both kind of to the southeast on St. Paul and farther down Murdoch and 9th Street as you get closer to Zoo Boulevard. 2-family residential zoning, or even multifamily residential zoning is not necessarily new. If you go up to the map that had the circle on it, just to give it a little bit of perspective, in a 1,000-foot radius around the property, anything in yellow is 2-family residential zoning. The most recent one is this one that kind of has a sideward T. That was probably the most recent case where that's not multifamily level. Each one of those is an individual lot with an individual duplex on it. But the brown on the west at Murdoch and Sheridan, that's B multifamily, so that's apartment level multifamily units. Everything in green is general office, and that's mostly probably the Ascension properties where they have some multifamily residential for the services that they provide. So this isn't necessarily something that's new. For example, this property here, and I believe this property here, has the TF3 zoning. It also has the conditional use for the multifamily level. If you go a little bit farther down on Elm, which is the one just north of Central, right? On Elm, just west of Edwards, there's another couple examples of kind of a con for multifamily development for duplex development. So not necessarily out of character with the broader surrounding area, even though the individual properties surrounding this are single family. If you were reading the staff report, there's a couple different sections in there, and I'll try to explain. There's a section where staff, I'm just going to use the word suggestion because it can kind of get confusing about requirement versus a recommendation. So I'm going to say staff often provides boards with suggestions based on something we consider. One of the suggestions we had was maybe reorient the site plan to where you had 1 common driveway, not a requirement. Planning Commission considered this on Thursday. They just approved it with the conditions of approval. They didn't take any of the suggestions to make them requirements, just so you know. And as we've been kind of typically doing some of the architectural standards, that have been applied to some duplex cases but have not been applied in other places. Again, is a staff suggestion for boards to consider. Planning Commission did not put those as part of their requirement as well, but there are things for you to consider in your recommendation this evening. The conditions of approval, which are requirements, they are the things that Planning Commission put into their recommendation, is that we're limiting it to just 4 duplexes. That is less than the 14.5 dwelling units an acre. I apologize, I did not do the math of how many total dwelling units that could be, but the 4 duplexes or 8 dwelling units is less than 14.5 dwelling units an acre. Considering how they lay out, not wanting to overstack the property, we're providing a limit to say you can just do the 4 duplexes and no more than that. As I mentioned, a revised site plan that shows the landscaping is required before a building permit is issued. And as always with conditional uses, that development is in conformance with the site plan that's approved. And so the staff member who is working on this case, she indicated to me that the feedback she's been getting is simply more just questions of people curious of what was going on. She did not hear anybody overtly come out and have any opposition to this case. Planning Commission took it on consent, which means the Planning Commission read the staff report, approved staff's recommended conditions of approval, and there wasn't anybody at the meeting who voiced to say they wanted to hear it. So the way Planning Commission works is either the Planning Commission wants to hear it. If they don't want to hear it, we reach out to the public. If nobody in the public wants to talk about it, they take them on consent. So when we have 13 cases to go through, we're not here till tomorrow. So unlike city council can't do, but anyway. So like I said, there hasn't been a lot of opposition on this case. If they have, they haven't voiced it as far. So I can stand in for any questions you might have for me.
Is the applicant online?
Or
Not that I know of, no.
Anybody have any questions?
I'm just,
Yes, sir.
another kind of pedantic question, but when you said that some of this landscape should minimize the impact on surrounding residences, it's kind of confusing, because these are residences. So like, are we, like, what is the impact that residences could have on residences?
It softens the view when you think of what could be built here just based on it is now, or even if you were to split it up and, have 1 on Murdoch, 2 on Custer. This is putting a higher level of intensity of development on a site to where like the landscaping just kind of softens it. When you think of like you're driving by a commercial development, there's a wall. Like think of when you're driving on like West Street where there's like no landscaping in front of parking, and then you go to like more newer parts of town when the landscape ordinance was included. Landscaping kind of softens the blow of higher intensity, like visually softens the blow, provides some visual aesthetic versus just parking or just walls or things like that. So with a higher level of intensity, providing some landscaping provides some visual aesthetic on the site, requires some visual aesthetic on the site, where otherwise there normally wouldn't be.
I like that. What I kind of heard was like, it felt like, I don't put it, like a barrier to access for those people living there. Like, how do we really incorporate it as opposed, into the neighborhood? Because we want them to be neighbors.
Right, and it's not like it's a wall of pampas grass or something like that. Like there's a calculation based on the depth of the lot, and I'm not going to go into all of that, but basically it's some shrubbery, depending on the amount of square footage, it might require a tree or 2.
There's still some like visual permeability.
Yes.
Okay.
The landscape street yard is not like a wall of landscaping hiding it from it. It's just more of like, requiring some level of landscaping that, provides some visual aesthetics
Tree
on.
stock and trees.
Yeah.
Got it. Right on. Thank you.
And the property now is basically a forest, and you can't even see in, it's completely,
And so you have pictures of
screened,
one
it's completely screened with just wild growth and
Yeah.
trees, and
go through them, but
I think it's a perfect place for some infill.
Yeah.
so the site seems like it's been in neglect for quite some time.
All right, anybody want to make a motion?
I would move that we accept the recommendation.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Anybody? Hey, moving right along. And now we have the PUD.
again, masterful CSRs we have, with their multitasking ability. Okay, our last one this evening is a zone change. I know I was here last month talking about PUDs, but I like to make a practice of talking about what a PUD is. It's planned unit development, it's custom zoning. Typically, no PUDs in the city are alike. And so it just allows some flexibility within our zoning code that doesn't necessarily fit within a nice, neat zoning classification that's already pre-built. So the applicant for this is Central Standard Brewing. I believe they are here tonight with their agent, Kim Edgington. So if you have specific questions about their operation, we can have that dialogue tonight. The property, as you can see, is located on North Millwood. Millwood's seeing a lot of activity recently. Just north of Douglas. First Street dead ends into this. They actually vacated the part that is on this side that would have dead ended into the railroad track anyway. There is a carve out you can see in the picture. It actually goes around the property. That was a negotiation to have with that property owner. That property is not included. So there's a little piece on the south you see there, and then it just kind of wraps around. So that property in the middle retains their current zoning and is not part of the PUD or anything like that. This zone change is to create the Millwood and Douglas Junction Planned Unit Development number 101. The uniqueness about this one, and I'm just going to read a statement that was on the Planned Unit Development side, is the primary use will be a microbrewery and a marketplace, single and multi-tenant, including retail and dining establishments, where marketplace is defined as allowing other uses permitted by right with supplemental conditions in the Central Business District zoning district. It also says to utilize an outdoor area to enjoy games, entertainment, and goods available in the market and dining areas of the PUD. If you're not familiar, Central Standard Brewing has an existing location at 156 South Greenwood. I'm very familiar with that location. They are looking to expand their business model, open up a second location. My understanding is that the primary manufacturing will move to this location if it is approved. To expand their business model, be able to expand some manufacturing, but also provide an opportunity for some other tenants to move in, provide some dining establishments. Probably typically of what they do now is inviting some food trucks on occasion, having some outdoor games and events, that type of thing. They also want to provide some entertainment, so we're going to talk about nightclub in the city. Again, based on our definition, alcohol is present. You want entertainment in the form of music, dancing, live music, things like that. We have to legally put it in the definition for this case. When it comes to the entertainment portion for outdoors, this is going to your question, Mr. Washburn, about outdoor entertainment. In this case, they would like some outdoor entertainment where some of the music can be outdoors. Worked with the applicant and they agreed to restrict it to the east portion of the site. So you do have some residences across the street on the west. And of course you do have some residents across the railroad track and things like that. But keep in mind, but because this is a commercial type zoning, there is landscaping and screening standards and things like that. You're not just having an open field where there's no barrier between the east property line, not to mention their property line and shy of the railroad track. One thing we clarified in terms of the east half is to have it follow the curvature of the line, just to help them utilize more of the east half of the property, let it follow the curvature, that halfway line follow the same arc of the railroad track. The unique thing about this PUD is they want to hearken to some of the Central Business District zoning standards. Central Business District zoning, if you think of where CBD zoning typically is, downtown, Delano Business District, lot line to lot line development, actually most of these buildings already do that. They were built prior to our current zoning standards were in place anyway, so there are already some that are built on the lot line. The other thing about Central Business District standards is that it doesn't have a minimum off-street parking requirement. Doesn't mean that they can't put more. Think about it when it comes to market providing enough parking. If people think, well, I can never get a parking spot, I'm never going to go there. So there's always that balance. Sometimes when people say zero off-street parking requirement, they think they're never going to provide any parking. Not to say that they will or have to, but sometimes the market corrects things. Something they're also talking about doing, and it's not a requirement in here because boards cannot require another department to act, is talking with the Public Works and Utilities Department to provide angled parking in front of their establishment on Millwood. Right now, you have on-street parking, it's all parallel parking. If you make it angled parking, you actually get more cars on the street, less cars going farther out from away from there, more directly in front of where you're looking to do it. It's not exactly well shown here, but in one of the pictures you can see it. As you get closer to Douglas, there's already angled on-street parking in front of some of those buildings, so it's already happening on Millwood. They're going to ask whether or not they can do it in front of theirs farther up Millwood as well. So again, it's not part of a recommendation for you to decide on because we can't tell Public Works, you have to let them do that. But it's something they are willing to consider, and likely we'll be talking to Public Works about just to add some on-street parking opportunity in the area. Something that's unique about this location is all those residences on the west side of Millwood are zoned either limited industrial or general commercial, or the majority of them are. You have a duplex and a single-family home at the top, and I think there's one single-family zoned house on the south side. But all the purple and the pink right across the street, that's limited industrial and general commercial. Something that's unique about that as well is you have a few houses, a commercial building, a few more houses. So it's just kind of this hodgepodge remnant of when the Delano area had a much higher intensity use than what it is. The restrictions in the planned unit development are actually down zoning this property. Right now it's unrestricted limited industrial. That is a lot of nuisance uses that have no restriction, that don't have to ask permission. They can just show up if they wanted to. So we're actually down zoning the property, restricting a significant amount of uses out so that they actually cannot come back in again. So that's one thing to keep in mind with this. With the entertainment and the marketplace that they've defined, looking at putting out operating hours to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, at midnight on Friday and Saturday. And so when it comes to the festivities that are outdoors and all of the fun being had, being also still respectful neighbors. Where even if you live in limited industrial zone property, but you have a house, you're minimizing the nuisance factor for nearby residences as well. Screening and landscaping required by the code, so you have minimum 6-foot screening fence when abutting or adjacent to residentially zoned property, as well as landscaping barriers. One of the things unique about this is allowing, instead of a landscape street yard where it's already paved, meeting that requirement with some movable planters, some sort of unique solution to where you can provide some landscaping without ripping up some of the pavement that's already there that actually might be very utilized for other things. The existing, or the initial PUD text that that was submitted did have architectural controls and things of that nature. Staff recommended it and the applicant was amenable to it, requiring it to align with the Delano neighborhood design guidelines. PUDs can technically not require that because they are custom, you can kind of pick and choose. But we want that written in there. So number one, if they make any adjustments to the exterior of the buildings, they build any new buildings, or they put a parking lot on the site, there are standards that govern all of that. So you're fitting in character with Delano, so there's architectural reviews if and when any of that happens. Kind of talked about that. Majority of the properties on the north and west are residential. There's some commercial. Majority of the properties on the south are commercial. The east is fairly undeveloped, but you get a little bit past the railroad tracks, like a vehicle storage yard, things of that nature. Another interesting thing about this property is about a half-mile shy of where the Q line stops. So the Q line is a free, used to be a trolley, now electric bus service that operates on weeknights and Saturday. It turns around in Douglas and Seneca. Again, we would hope that maybe if there's a successful business, it might encourage expansion. So many people want the Q line to expand. I used to work for that department. It was so much fun when the Q line got changed because people wanted to ride. Minimal resources, but might encourage, but half a mile is really not that far to walk for some people. So there are alternative transportation modes nearby of this location. Community and investments plan splits this site as appropriate for residential development and industrial development. So it's kind of weird. We generally kind of blend that to say a mix of residential and commercial. As I mentioned before, this is actually down zoning the property. We're taking some of the high intensity uses out of there. The locational guidelines within there heavily promote using existing infrastructure. This is a great example of adaptive reuse. The property has been out of use for quite some time. And we're using existing infrastructure like public water and sewer and streets and things like that versus trying to put pressure on the outskirts of the city. It also heavily suggests using things to mitigate what could be nuisance factors when you have commercial near residential uses. And so that language is built into the PUD regarding screening and landscaping and hours of operation and things like that. The Wichita Places for People plan has a strategy that says improve the economic feasibility of commercial service and uses and the markets necessary to support them. This area is defined as an area of opportunity within the community or within the Places for People plan, which, as we heard before, typically requires a little bit more encouragement for stability and public and private investment. This would be a phenomenal example of private investment in the area. The Delano Neighborhood Plan is also split on its future land use map of residential and commercial development. So you kind of blend those together to get kind of that mixed use development. But it has guiding principles, and one that says support innovative, vibrant, and diverse economy. And the other one says take better care of what we have. There's existing buildings that they intend to utilize. And this would provide growth in our local economy, especially even with local businesses. Staff is recommending approval. Our recommended text was in your staff report, everything in red. As I said, a lot of this discussion happens with the applicant even before we go to Planning Commission. There was not a sticking point that we had where something that we recommended, they fought with. It was at Planning Commission on Thursday. They recommended approval 11-0 per staff recommendation. There was one public comment from a resident who lives on Vine, which is just one block over. Concerned of noise, concerned of parking on the street, and maybe, in an opinion, too much parking in front of some people's houses. Overall, just some of the, it's just going to make traffic busier, going to potentially have noise nuisances and things like that. I don't believe that they're here tonight to provide comment, but that was only the one public comment that we had at Planning Commission. I have heard from other residents sharing similar concerns of possible noise and just increase in traffic, concerned that there would be only on-street parking and how would that affect the neighborhood and things of that nature. So I can stand for any questions. Again, we have their agent, Kim Edgington, but I also believe individuals from Central Standard are here as well if you want to ask them questions about their actual business.
I just want to clarify, you did say that parking was going to be angled parking.
I can't
Only, or was
guarantee that.
just a suggestion?
I can't guarantee that. In conversations and even at the Planning Commission, it was brought up that they are interested in pursuing that with the Public Works Department. Public Works has to sign off on that. It requires a use of street permit, which is actually paying rent to the city every single year, but that's something they have to sign off on. So unfortunately, we can't require that, but it is an idea and could be a possibility. Definitely not a guarantee, though.
Is that the building on the very south edge, is that the previous county substance abuse facility?
I don't know. Do you want to go through the pictures on that? And that might help him if he sees it. Keep going. Let's keep going.
There was a ballet student.
So there's this is the storage unit. That's not what I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
It's right by the railroad track.
Yeah.
So this is their first building, right there, that white one. I don't know if it was a former.
Yeah, okay.
This building here is the one that's not included. And these are the buildings on the north end. Sorry, I didn't get a good picture of the first building. That's part of the PUD, but.
Have you received any responses to postings other than the people who attended the planning commission meeting?
I have gotten phone calls, yes.
And how would you summarize those phone calls?
Share the,
Let me tell you why I'm asking.
yeah.
If I were a resident in this area, I'd be elated for the downscaling of the zoning. I'd also be pleased that vacant property was going to go into use. But as a resident, I'd be quite concerned about having an establishment serving alcohol, the hours, potential business hours involved, and the noise level. I'm curious whether you got any neighbors.
It mirrored a lot of what you said, not so much of the production, didn't really bother people, more of the entertainment. Where's it gonna be? To what end? Like, is it gonna be just noisy every single weekend? Are there gonna be so much parking on the street that people are blocked into their driveways or can't get into the driveways? Those were the general complaints. I think I got like 3 or 4. There wasn't a tremendous amount, but definitely some that mirrored some of what you said of, I'm glad they're cleaning up the property, but like, I don't really like the idea of the entertainment. How loud is that going to be? How late at night?
You know, that issue, the buffer zone, I read up earlier, actually applies directly to their original location. They're like right across the street from the park.
Yep.
They're probably within
They had a conditional
500
use for.
feet of a church over there. And I don't know if you've driven by there, but I would normally not like totally endorse them, but they actually fit quite nicely
Yeah.
into that space right there. It looks like really great.
And this, because it's a PUD zone change, it basically does the same thing as a conditional use, because it's the same process, they're just adding the use by right in the zoning, so effectively, because they would have needed it too, because there's residential zoning within 300 feet of their location, so this is acting in lieu of a conditional use, which is what they needed to open their first location.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Do you mind if I ask a question to the applicant?
Sure.
I assume that since your place on Greenwood is in a neighborhood too, that you've heard some of these similar concerns about being in the middle of a neighborhood. So I don't know if you would be able to speak to that, just to maybe talk about your experience with that already.
Yeah, we when we went into our original location, the neighbors were concerned with parking, noise, that sort of thing. Those things kind of all worked themselves out, and one of the neighbors that originally voiced concern about those things came down and thanked us when he sold his house because we raised his property value. So, I mean, there were some adjustments that we had to make to accommodate neighbors and be mindful of those things. But in the end, we don't get any complaints anymore, so.
Awesome.
Thank you.
While you're up here, can I ask you a question too? It looks like, and I was looking at the map here, that there's some mature trees on that site.
Mhm.
What's the plan for those?
We're gonna save as many trees as possible. That's kind of one of the reasons we really liked the site, was because it had a lot of mature cottonwoods and American elms on the property, and we want to kind of incorporate that into the outdoor kind of forested beer garden. It's kind of a rare thing to have all that natural shade in an outdoor setting like that.
So you'll try to retain as many of those?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Mhm.
Awesome.
Is there on-site parking included in your plan?
We haven't gotten any formal plans done with an architect yet, but we anticipate there being on-site parking. We just didn't want to be, hamstrung with a, 5-to-1 per occupant thing or anything. But yeah, there will be on-site parking.
I'd like to thank you guys for showing up and
Yes.
making a presentation. I wish all the applicants would be.
Out of that, CSB is known for being very good community
Yeah.
stewards and give back. We do a lot
Absolutely.
of-
And I feel bad, poor Andy gets put on the spot to
Sorry.
do my job. My name is Kim Edgington, and I've just been working with these guys for several months now, representing them through this process. They don't really need me though. They're good on their own, because they really got kind of put through the ringer when they went through this the first time, and have learned a lot along the way that we kind of could address beforehand. That yes, while this says it's central business district parking, which means no parking required, they realize that they're gonna have to provide some parking, but it needs to be a balancing act to not have to give up valuable property that they could maybe keep in trees, or, have a beer garden, have a venue, people can have weddings, things like that. So, those kind of details will have to get themselves worked out, and same with the buildings on the site too, whether or not those are retained. You have to have them evaluated to see, is it worth it to keep them? Or do we start from scratch? So, the neighborhood concerns, we absolutely understand. But I think there's probably gonna be a lot of transitioning going on, because those houses that are across the street that are in limited industrial, they're technically non-conforming. If something were to happen to those houses and they were damaged beyond 50% repair, they could not be rebuilt in the industrial zoning. So, this is a lot better fit than, just your sheer straight LI zoning uses. So,
This is gonna be where the majority of the production is. Is there any sound issues or smell issues?
no,
with
it'll all be
production?
enclosed. And then one of the questions we also had at planning commission was whether or not there would be like semis coming up, and it's at a much smaller scale than that. So it wouldn't be, semi-traffic up and down Millwood now. And the nice thing about Millwood is that it has a very wide right-of-way. There's 80 feet of right-of-way, which is almost twice as much as a typical neighborhood street. So there's a lot of room there to possibly do that angled parking, if they find that that's a need. We did go to both the Delano Neighborhood Association meeting and Delano United meetings. And one of the interesting things that we learned is that this was actually Millwood is that wide because it was part of a trolley route. And so it made a loop over across First Street. So, and we hope that it does help spur some of that development on west along Douglas that, Delano's right now, Seneca is really that's a little bit of a line in the sand there, and to start pulling that development farther west and encouraging some more of this infill, and being able to work with the Delano Association to do some wayfinding signage. Hey, we're here, we're not right on Douglas, but this is how to get to us. Which they have the same thing now. They're not all right on Douglas either, but they've been great neighbors, and I think that this is going to just serve to hopefully be an impetus for other development in this area. Once this, investment, other property owners will kind of follow suit. So, hope to have your support as well when we go on to council.
Anybody else have any more questions?
I would just add that the meeting where they had their original conditional use request was the first interaction I ever had with the DAB board. I was at the meeting, and it's kind of the reason I started going to our district's meeting. So I've learned a lot too.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Anybody willing to make a motion?
I move we approve.
Point of order, I was like reading that public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sure.
I believe we have a couple of other comments.
Oh,
A hand was raised multiple times.
Okay, does anyone have a comment?
Yeah, I live about a mile and a half north of there, at 10th and McLean. We can hear that railroad going through there at night, and every time it crosses one of those streets, it sounds a loud horn, which we hear a mile and a half away. So if the residents have any concern about nightclub sounds, somebody playing guitar or something in the building, it's nothing compared to that railroad.
Oh, that's good. That's nice.
Anything would be moving over there. And as a former Air Force safety officer, I would have a concern about having people consuming alcohol near a railroad. I would wonder what kind of fencing is going to be along that to protect people from wandering out onto the railroad right away.
It will be fully fenced.
Okay.
along
Great.
the boundary of their property line, because, I mean, they're a very kid-friendly, you know, there's
Yes.
kids, dogs, people everywhere, so, you know, it's definitely at the top of their mind to be as safe as possible there.
It's great.
And the other third comment, I had a neighbor who was a professor at WSU, and he tried to have a brewery about a couple blocks away down in the Delano district, and he ran a brewery and it went bankrupt from lack of participation, he just couldn't get the customer base to make it live. And I would look at his business results before you spend a lot of money on a brewery here, you know. Especially with a bar, there's an Irish pub or something just around the corner from there. So would there really be enough business to support that? That would be my question.
Okay.
And I'd hate to have something fail in the neighborhood, a lot of investment go in there and then it fails and the neighborhood eyesore.
Thank you. Next.
In the interest of anybody online, my name is Vince Hancock. I'm the Vice President of the Delano Neighborhood Association and the Delano group that we get together where we have both businesses and residents and clergy all together. It's called Delano United, and they shared with us at Delano United. We did not take a formal vote, so I'm not authorized to speak on their behalf, but not a person in that room. You know, they had good questions, and there were no what I'll call deal-breaking questions. If someone said, oh, this thing, if it happens, it's going to kill the whole deal. So I would say they were generally in favor of it. And for those of you who haven't read your 2019 Delano plan lately, sure enough, the line that gets drawn at Seneca is not intentional. The actual goal is for the business district to continue all the way to Glen Street, which just coincidentally allows a certain Irish pub and others to be included. The goal is within 3 to 5 years to have diagonal parking all the way from Seneca to Glen. So to have this be half a block away from the existing bar, I don't think that would be out of character with the neighborhood. So again, I can't officially say that everybody in the neighborhood's going to support it, but of all those who heard from them, they did. Any questions?
I second Lisa's motion.
Harold, did you want to speak or anything? Everybody good? Okay, great. You made the motion? You made it?
Lisa?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Everybody? Okay? Awesome.
Just a brief follow-up, are they selling CSB at the Shamrock here?
They are.
All right. Probably be all right.
I just had a couple announcements really quick. Next Saturday, like Officer Soto mentioned, we are having Convoy of Hope. We would encourage anyone to come and participate in that, and just remind you, your kids have to be present to get a backpack or food for them as well. We're also having my District 6 coffee that day. We had already had it planned, so it kind of happens to be at the same time and same day. So we still are going to meet here at 9 o'clock and basically go volunteer for an hour and just kind of help out. So we're excited about that. Love Your Community last weekend was awesome. It was very hot, but there were a lot of really awesome participants. So appreciate everybody that was able to make that. And our next meeting is August 1st at 6:30. So anyone else have anything to add?
I had one question. What was the event that was at Evergreen Park that the officer was speaking about?
Love Your Community?
Love Your Community.
That was this past Saturday.
And
It
did
was
we
just-
do anything like that at our park? Is that
Which park?
Greenwood? By Central Standard? Or Hyde Park, yeah.
I'll get your information and we'll try to talk about it and see if we can get something together.
It was really cool.
Yeah,
We
it was
were over
really
there and it was like, you know, all the inflatable stuff
Yes.
and it was neat.
Yes. And Angel might be willing to, talk about how, since he's the one that put most of it together, we can
Cool.
get some context from him. So, yeah, I'll get your contact information afterwards.
Councilmember Ballard, something to go along those lines is we do have neighborhood night out coming up on August 9th. So if you're wanting to organize something within your neighborhood, a lot of the times people organize something in a nearby park or along their block. That's something that you guys could also do. Usually fire, WPD comes out, the council member representing that district comes out, and it's just a fun time to meet neighbors.
What is the process for that, to do the neighborhood night out?
The process for that, there's an online application, and you basically submit an application, it's a 2-page, and then right there you request whether you want your council member to attend, whether you need barricades, WPD, fires, and it just is very simple, there's no fee associated, it just lets city staff know that that you're hosting something.
Quick announcement, on the 18th, the North Riverside Neighborhood Association is having a candidate forum. I believe we have a couple of county commission candidates, at least, maybe more, but that's the 18th.
What was the date?
The 18th of this month, North Riverside at
Is it Woodland?
Woodland Methodist, yeah.
Right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming.